right, welcome back everybody. This is another chapter in the Fishing Academy, and today's a recap on bait nets. I did one about 8-9 months ago, and I thought it was time to get you updated and let you know what's new. And this is part of a product review that I like to do for all our viewers. And today we're going to be covering Leaf Fisher Sports, and it's their humpback bait nets. Now, they call it a minnow net. Us captains, we call it a flats net. And the reason for that is it's really something unique. Leaf Fisher, in conjunction with all the captains in the area, have come up with the perfect net to fish with in Florida, especially up and down the coast where most of the bait is caught in 10 feet of water or less. We catch most of our bait around Tampa Bay and 2 to 3 to 4 feet. Even under the Gandy Bridge or the Skyway Bridge, this method works very good. So what's the big difference? Okay, so let's cover. Number one, the bait net was made for one reason, to catch bait, so you can go out and fish and have a good time. Now, over the years, the standard bait net, years ago when I got started, was 1.6 pounds per foot. You know, that means that a 10-foot net weighed 16 pounds dry. Remember, once that net got thrown a couple of times, it soaked in some water. It got to about 17 pounds, maybe almost 18. So they started coming out with a 1.3 pound per foot. And they found out that, gee, that was a little easier to throw. You know, by the time it got wet, it was about 14 pounds for a 10-foot net, made it a lot easier. But years and years ago, about 20 years ago, us captains started talking and saying, you know, we're throwing these nets, 10, 20 times a day sometimes to catch enough bait. And they do wear you out. And we came out to the calculation that the ideal weight for a bait net, now I'm not talking about up north in New York, or if you're in Georgia or North Carolina, I can't tell you about that area, but I can tell you that in the Florida market on the West Coast, the best net is 1 pound per foot. That means an 8-foot net, right there, it's going to weigh 8 pounds. That means that a 10-foot net is going to weigh 10 pounds. Now think about that. You almost cut the weight in half of what the original nets used to be, and then you cut it down another 30-40% off the 1.3 pounds per foot. Technically, I'll be honest with you, if I'm fishing and trying to catch bait in 20-25 feet of water, no. I'm going to go to 1.6 pounds per foot. But what I find out that most of my bait is caught in 10 feet of water or less. But there's an exception to the rule. Because it's a lighter net, as it hits the water, it doesn't sink as fast. Shallow water doesn't make a difference because you got 3 or 4 feet of water, the net's on the bottom. But now when you're around range markers, think about it, it takes a little longer. The old theory used to be that, well, if it takes longer, you're not going to catch the bait. It swims away. You're right and you're wrong. Yes, you're right. When that net hits the water, you see the bait just flare out. But what happens? You ever notice when you throw that heavy net, that 16 pound, 18 pound net, the bait runs to the side, the net starts to go down. Halfway down, you see the bait come back up on top of the net. With this type of net, 1 pound per foot, what happens? When the net hits the water, it starts to slowly sink. It sinks a lot slower. That bait runs out because it got spooked. Now that bait comes back in. And believe it or not, most of the time, you'll catch as much bait with a 1 pound than you do with a 1.6 pound around range markers. Now, if you're talking out in a pass in a channel where the current is very strong and you're in 20 feet of water, no, it doesn't. But for the average person that catches bait every day, 1 pound per foot is ideal. Now, let's go to number 2 scenario. What do you want to do? You want to go to quarter? You want to go 3/8 mesh? 3/8 mesh is going to sink a little faster. So if I'm going to be catching most of my bait in a little deeper water, 7-8 feet of water, or if I'm going to be catching my bait under the Gandy Bridge, under the Skyway Bridge, 3/8 will usually be the ideal net for that. And it will sink fast enough to get all that you want. But If the tide's slow, or if you're in less than 10 feet of water, a 1/4 inch is perfect. And how is this measured? And I want you to think about this. A 1/4 inch, when you buy a net, that means it's a 1/4 inch square. If you go from knot to knot, it's about 1/2 inches stretched. They call it a stretch. So you'll see that most of your bait, when you buy them, they'll have a label on them, and it'll say 1/2 inch stretch, 1/4 inch square. Or if you want a 3/8, it'll be 3/4 inch from knot to knot. When you pull it, stretched, but if you square it off, it's 3/8. Ideal. To me, most of the time, I'm going to throw a 1/4 inch net. Now, if I want some thread fins, if I'm going to throw range markers, I'm going to throw in a little deeper water, I'll take out the 3/8. But the advantage of the 1/4 inch, you don't gill as many baits. And especially remember, from April through November, these baits will hatch about every 45 days or so. So you'll have a period where you have perfect sized baits, 2.5, 3, 4 inches, perfect for fishing. Then you show up one day and all the baits are little things like this and they get gilled on your net. So by throwing a 1/4 inch, I avoid a lot of the gill, or what we call Christmas tree, where you bring up your net and got 1,000 little heads sticking out from the mesh because the mesh is too big. So overall, my first net to go to would be 1/4 inch. Second would be 3/8. If I'm catching bait in deeper water most of the time, I'll go strictly 3/8. That's just a guideline. Now, what Lee Fisher has done is they have made this net so it will, and the material, when you're talking about a humpback net, it's not, the material is very soft, very pliable, and very strong. Some of the other nets on the market, they try to impress you with a heavier mesh, a thicker material. Well, the thicker material is slower to sink. It doesn't catch as much bait. It's not as pliable. The more pliable, the softer, the better the material, the easier it is to open. And when we're talking about that, let's go to this. In theory, the perfect throw on an 8-foot net will give you 16 feet across from one end to the other. So you got 8 foot touching the floor up to the top, but when you throw it, boom, you got 16 feet. Does the average person throw a perfect pancake every time? No. So you can figure that 16 feet, you're going to average maybe 14 once you get good at it. I'm not going to tell you you can't get 16, 15 and a half, but in reality, what I see from the average person throwing a bait net, he's going to open it up about 14, maybe 14 and a half feet. So the next thing, you go to a 10-foot net. Now you got 20 feet all the way when it's laying on the ground. So if you only throw it 80%, hey, you still got 16, 17, 18 feet. I would say that a 10-foot net, the average person, when he gets good at it, he's going to open up about 18 feet. A guy that's really good can get 19 to 20. Everybody gets lucky. I've thrown many pancakes in my life, beautiful, and I've thrown some ugly ones too. So don't let that discourage you. Now, one of the things that we want to talk about too is, what's legal. In the state of Florida, you can throw a net. If it's a mullet net, for example, the biggest net you can throw as far as a cast net in the state of Florida is 14 feet. That means it opens up 28 feet across. And most of those nets are going to be for mullet and bigger species. And you are allowed, you can keep things like black drum, you can keep, mullet, you can keep sheephead, mango snapper. There's a lot of species, and you just got to look it up in the FWC to make sure that you're legal, that you are allowed to keep. Black drum, you're allowed sand perch. So there's a lot of things you can catch if you're just looking with a bigger mesh net to keep those type of fish. But for bait fish, I always recommend that you go either 1/4 or 3/8 square, which is 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch stretched. Then from now, let's go to the next thing. You know, we got to take care of these nets. And the way you take care of these nets is you should always rinse them, wash them really good when you get through, and then you're going to hang them up. Find somewhere in your garage. I tell you, if you got a T-top on your boat, you can wrap it around the top of your T-top on one of your rod holders. You don't want the net hanging, not touching the floor. You want it just where the leads are touching the floor, but the net is stretched as much as possible. That way, what you're doing is you're keeping that net kind of stretched out pretty good. So, and out here in my utility room, and one of my poles, and you'll see it, that holds my the top over my carport, I put a pulley up here. I got a little line cleat here, and I got the line that goes from here all the way through here with a hook. And what I do is I will put my top of my around the horn on my bait net on here, and I'll pull it up and stretch it until the leads are just touching the ground, so that net is kind of stretched out. Let it dry. It'll dry in about an hour or so. Again, if you can't do that around the house and you got a T-top on your boat, perfect. You don't want the net sitting out in the sun a lot. So the best thing to do is you let it dry, put it away, and about every month or so, if you're using the net on a regular basis, put it in some lukewarm water in a bucket with a little bit of softener, maybe 1 tablespoon of softener for about 5 to 10 minutes. Shake it good, let it sit in there, take it out, rinse it, and then put it to stretch. Now, one last thing. Everybody recommends that you, when you're done, you put it in a bucket, you throw it in the boat. When you use your net, guys, don't just put it in a bucket. Because what happens is, number one is you got to make sure you take all the grass out of it, any dead bait that you might have on it. That causes heat. And you ever reach in that bucket and you feel the heat coming off that net. That's really, it just demolishes your net. What I recommend is when you get the net, you're done for the morning, shake it, try to get all the grass that you can off of it. Take as much of weeds and everything. And then, this is what I use right here. And this is another Lee Fisher product, which is great. Real heavy duty. The commercial guys use it. This is not a Walmart little special deal. I mean, this is a super, super strong. The commercial guys use it. It is perfect to put your net in. It drains on the bottom. It lets your net air during the day. So when you get home, it's not all wet. Now, the other good part about this is when I throw my net, you see in a lot of these shows where the people just shake their net, put the bait all over the floor, then they scoop it up, put it in the bait well. Well, you're hurting the bait. That puts a lot of damage to the bait. So you don't want to do that. And if you just dump it into your bait well, if you got a lot of grass, it clogs your overflow, then you have all kinds of problems with your bait well. So if you use something like this, because it's got so many holes, you dump your bait in here, you can reach in, take whatever grass, any junk you got, and then you can pour it straight into your bait well. Now your bait well is clean and your bait is fresh. At the end of the day, you did everything you're supposed to do. You washed your net, it's dry, it's ready to go. What do? Okay, you already washed this when you got home, of course, and it's dry. What I've done is you go to your local canvas shop, and out of some umbrella material, I had to make me a 5-gallon bucket with a size out of some umbrella material with a drawstring. And this works perfect because the ideal thing with this is it will fit right in here like this. This umbrella is breathable, so it lets it breathe. This is a 10-foot net, fits in here. And they're, and they make them these pretty reasonable, and you can get them any color you want. Just usually they'll use some leftover umbrella material from one of their jobs. Now you got it. There's a drawstring. Two things. If you don't have room to put this in your boat, when you stick this somewhere in the corner of your boat, think about it. You're not going to tear up your net. This takes care of it. This is pretty well tear-proof. So you got your net in a nice bag that's going to be ventilated and protect your net. But still, I still put it in mine, right in here. It fits perfect. It's out of the way and for use for the next time. So again, I just want to say a little bit about, if you're looking for the right net, go over to Lee Fisher, Tampa Fishing Outfitters, any of their stores. A lot of the retailers carry it, and it's called humpback, and they call it a minnow net. We call it a flats net, but remember, you want the 1 pound per foot net. You're going to get the best net on the market, easiest net to throw in the market. So thank you very much. Visit their website, Lee Fisher Sports, or visit one of their retail locations.